although Heisenberg may or may not have known it. Cern is an abbreviated title for an ancient Celtic deity called Cernunnos. Cernunnos, whose name means horned one, is thought to be the god of death and rebirth and the lord of the underworld. He is often depicted with rings or torques around his stag-like horns or in his hands, which may symbolize the circle of destruction and restoration that he represents. To further concretize this idea, Cernunnos is also depicted with the ring in one hand and a snake in the other. Because of the cycle by which it sheds its skin, the snake has ever been a mystical motif of death and rebirth, destruction and restoration. In a reversed esoteric adaptation, the rings of the Large Hadron Collider could be representative of the rings of Cernunnos, and, by further associative interpretation, may very well reveal CERN's prime esoteric objective. I believe it does, and will address it at the end of this analysis. I understand that drawing correlations between the acronym of CERN and deities from the ancient world may seem too forced and tenuous for critical minds, and I might be inclined to agree, if CERN had not evoked such correlations first. Rather than distance themselves from associations with arcane pagan deities, the directors of CERN welcomed and even celebrated the placement of a very unscientific icon in the courtyard of their main facilities. On the 18th of June 2004, a 2-meter-high statue, bequeathed by the representatives of India's Department of Atomic Energy, was ceremoniously unveiled at CERN. It was a statue of the Hindu god Shiva, engaged in the Nataraja, the cosmic dance of destruction. Shiva is one of 3 members of the Trimurti, the Hindu Trinity, in which the cosmic functions of creation, preservation, and destruction are personified in the forms of Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer, who is also known as the transformer. It is important to understand that in Hindu mythology, Lord Shiva destroys the world in order to renew, restore, and reconstitute it. A commemorative plaque positioned next to the likeness of the dancing Shiva emblazons a quote from Austrian-born American physicist Fritjof Capra. It reads, in part, "Hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics." Think about this, says Steve Quayle in his book True Legends. A symbolic statue of what might be a fallen angel who promises to destroy things as we know them now and rebuild a new, improved universe, with a plaque basically saying the facility will be trying to unify mythology, religion, and physics. Skeptics will be quick to point out that the unifying of ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics is only metaphorically represented in the dance of Shiva and has no practical application in the scientific activities of CERN. Again, I might be inclined to agree, except for the fact that CERN has been deliberately encouraging the coalescence of mythology, art, and physics in very bizarre ways. In 2014, a dance opera entitled Symmetry was performed and filmed at the CERN facilities, including inside of the Large Hadron Collider. Directed by filmmaker Ruben Van Leer and featuring the voice of American soprano Claren McFadden, Symmetry was a collaborative project involving not only choreographers and dancers from the production team, but many of CERN's own scientists. Once again, rather than distance themselves from arcane and mythological associations, the scientists at CERN embraced this highly esoteric and occult-laced production. could spend hours breaking down all of the deliberate esoteric insinuations in the trailer for the film alone. But in the interest of time, let me just point out one of the more obvious details. The name of the film's protagonist is Lucas, which also happens to be the actual name of the Slovakian dancer and choreographer who plays him. Without plunging too deeply into etymological roots, the name Lucas means bringer of light, and is in fact a derivation of the Latin term Lucifer. Of course, all of this could be purely coincidental, but given the overtly esoteric nature of the film, it is highly unlikely that the name of the main character is a consequence of happenstance, regardless of the filmmaker's intention. The truth is that the occult, art, and science have always been fundamentally entwined. The natural synthesis or symmetry that binds them is perhaps best illustrated in one man, Sir Francis Bacon. Bacon, who is widely considered to be the father of modern science and the primary proponent of the scientific method, which is the very underpinning of Cern, was himself an occultist, artist, and scientist. In fact, there is reason to believe that Francis Bacon is the true face behind the dubious mask of William Shakespeare. There is, in truth, no incongruity between the material and the metaphysical world, the physical and the spiritual. They are merely two sides of the same coin, both essential parts of the whole. When one penetrates deeply enough into what we call physics, one discovers, inevitably, the veil that separates these two realities. Occultists have always been aware of this fact. Even to Francis Bacon and his scientific contemporaries, many of whom were members of the mystery schools, deciphering the mechanisms of the material world was but the means to a far more important objective: to make contact with the entities lurking on the other side of the veil. This veil is often described as a dimensional doorway that allows access into realms beyond the perceivable world. The concept of unperceivable dimensions existing essentially in the same space we physically occupy is not only very probable, but also very widely accepted in the scientific community. Many top physicists are quietly hoping that the proton collisions happening at the Large Hadron Collider will puncture the fabric of our four-dimensional confine and allow us to peek through the keyhole, as it were, into another dimension or alternate universe. Some physicists have not been so quiet about this very real possibility. During a press briefing in 2009, Sergio Bertolucci, Director for Research and Scientific Computing at Cern, made the following curious statement. The Large Hadron Collider could open a doorway to an extra dimension, and out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it. There is no question that the scientists working at Cern hope to open a dimensional doorway. The real question is, what is the something that might come through when they do? Of course, for the particle physicist, the answer is simple. They hope to discover new particles that might exist on alternate dimensional planes. There is no doubt that this is the true and honest intention of the vast majority of physicists working at Cern. The problem is, as previously illustrated, that scientists, despite their best intentions, have always been little more than expendable tools in the hands of their benefactors. The pinnacle of science, for its elite occult practitioners, is not discovery, but contact. There are many indications that the power players of our world, including the Vatican, are preparing to make contact with the gods of the old world. Although I have not been able to confirm the validity of the following pictures, it appears that transparent panels containing arcane texts were photographed inside the Cern facilities by a group of Portuguese students from the Santa Cecilia Music Academy. The texts have been described as greetings or invocations written in ancient languages, including Aramaic, Hebrew, Mandarin, and Sanskrit. In the case of Sanskrit, the only people with the ability to read this sacred script, considered to be the language of the gods, are the scholars of the Vedas and Upanishads. If authentic, these panels may have been prepared for those somethings that might come through the dimensional doorway. It may seem to those unfamiliar with the theoretical realm populated by obtuse equations and pipe-smoking scientists, as Horn aptly puts it, that this analysis is nothing more than hearsay, hyperbole, and wild speculation. But as any theoretical physicist worth his salt will admit, particle physics and quantum mechanics is a world in which fact and fantasy are at times indistinguishable. When it comes to CERN and its Large Hadron Collider, there is no shortage of theoretical doomsday scenarios, many of which have not been propounded by unlearned laymen such as myself, but by some of the most esteemed scientific minds in the world. The following is a brief list of the theoretical possibilities relating to the activities of CERN, and is by no means exhaustive. Each one of these points represents either a scientific reality or a hypothetical possibility based on incredibly complex concepts and mathematical formulas that I won't even attempt to explain or pretend to understand.